All right, welcome to the third episode of season 2 of Overrated. My name is Sujay, and I'm joined once again by Girish and Surya, quickly going from guests to regulars. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing Spider-Man 3, starring Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, Topher Grace, and James Franco, directed by the one and only Sam Raimi. Again, we're doing Spider-Man 3 because out of the Sam Raimi trilogy, this is definitely, I'd say, the most memeable movie. Like, the other two have their moments, but as a whole, I think this is the meme of the trilogy. Would you guys agree?
No, I disagree.
Ooh. I know. Surya's a Spider-Man 2 diehard. Like,
yeah, but
I mean,
like,
Spider-Man 2 is the best movie, but I don't know if it has.
yeah, because like I see the first two are like actually like good movies. Like they're good Spider-Man movies.
Actually, no, I agree with because Spider-Man 2 has pizza time.
it has pizza time. I like. Okay, so basically, like every time I've seen like a good YTP video on YouTube, like that's how I know. Okay, like this is like
That's what I
good
was
meme
gonna say.
material. And also, I talked about like the B movie game. I talked about the Shrek 2 game. Believe it or not, like I played the Spider-Man 2 game on PS2 as well. And like
That was
actually
That was the good one, right?
yeah, it was good too. And
I remember
Yes.
people saying that was like the best one before the new PS4 came out because they just like
Right.
couldn't get it right. Yeah, I remember that one. I heard was really good.
there are like all these like random missions, and one of them was like a pizza delivery one, and that's where like the OG like Spider-Man 2 pizza theme.
Pizza
came from.
time.
Pizza time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if
I
y'all
don't
are
know.
familiar with that.
It's tough with me because Spider-Man 3 is just so bad that it has memes, but Spider-Man 2 is like good, and like the memes come from it just being like everyone's reactions and like just the absurdity of like most of the situations.
Yeah.
Like in general, the trilogy is pretty memey because they all have their moments, so like it's tough for me.
I
But
mean,
Spider-Man 3 is definitely the worst, so it's easy to pick on.
because like Spider-Man is meant to be like kind of like a more lighthearted character, right?
Yeah,
Than,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
most superheroes, like that's kind of why the memes
That's
come
his
out,
thing,
I
yeah.
think. So yeah.
But also like there's like lighthearted, and then there's also Spider-Man where like some of the dialogue just doesn't make sense, but they just put it in anyway.
I would honestly argue Spider-Man 1 gives it a run for his money just because Willem Dafoe is the best character in the entire trilogy. We'll talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah, well, we'll focus on
it's tough to
focus on
decide.
this
It's tough to
movie,
decide.
but
Yeah.
the entire trilogy has its moments, I think.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start with Where Were You? So I mentioned this in a previous episode, I think last season, but like in middle school, I think that's where I had my like Marvel superhero movies phase. So I thought that was when I watched the movie for the first time. But like I was like looking around my house, and there's like a bunch of random evidence that I've seen Spider-Man before then. Like I think for Halloween one year, I was Spider-Man from like the original trilogy, and like I found the mask somewhere. And then like I also have this like random like Lego set from the
Hey!
this one's from Spider-Man 2 for sure. Like because it came with like Doc Ock, I think, and that was the set.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, if I had to hazard a guess, I think I didn't see it in theaters for sure, but it was definitely soon right after it came out.
So for me, my favorite superhero, even before the MCU and all that, it's always been Spider-Man. I think it's because my dad, I don't know if he was like a Spider-Man fan or something, but I remember when the movie first came out, like I went with him to see it. And then like I remember even on TV, like they showed like I think it was like a Mythbusters, or it was like a behind the scenes, but it was like the science of Spider-Man. It was like peak like 2007, 8, whenever this movie came out, because like we watched it on TV. It's like a TV special. But I watched all 3 movies when they came out in theaters. I had like a Spider-Man shirt and everything. I think I went to Spider-Man like preschool. Like I've been Spider-Man.
You went to Spider-Man preschool? Is that what you said?
No, I went as Spider-Man to preschool.
I thought you
like
said you went to a special preschool just for people who like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I registered him saying that too, but like I just did not question it at all.
So he was like, yeah, that's classic.
Yeah.
No,
I was more of a Batman preschool kid, but yeah.
I've always liked Spider-Man, and so I think I watched all of them in theaters. But Spider-Man 3, I guess like the time I watched it in recent, because like when you're a kid and you watch it, you're like, oh cool, like Spider-Man. Like I'm not gonna be like, wow, the plot is really like different on this. Like I just watched, I was like, cool, Spider-Man. But I think the first time I watched it, and I was like, the third movie is just insane, was probably about like high school. When like, because it was always on TV. Spider-Man 1's always on TV, and I think 3 came on once. And it's just, that's when I watched it, and I was like, what's going on here? But yeah, I watched all of them in theaters.
Sure. Yeah, I know for sure I saw Spider-Man 2 in theaters. I feel like Spider-Man 3 might have been one of those things where it's like it was either like my brother's birthday or something, and we like
Yeah.
rented out a movie and watched it at home. It's funny because like we actually did that not too long ago this year too, but it was like back when Spider-Man 3 was on Netflix. We just like watched it for no reason.
Wait, Spider-Man 3's on Netflix?
It was.
It used to be.
It's
It
not
used to be.
now. But,
I thought I was gonna find out on Netflix, but nah.
I think Spider-Man 1 is on like IMDb or Hulu because I watched it recently with like a free trial or something.
I mean, if you really want to, you can just skip to the part in Spider-Verse where like he does like the reenactments of the Spider-Man 3 scenes and just watch that on loop. And I guess like pretty much got the gist of it. But yeah, I think it was on DVD, but like I most recently watched it like just yesterday. So now it's fresh.
Cool. We'll go on then to score it, which is where we give our personal score of the movie. I'll start. I'll say like this is a good movie. Like it's not like unwatchable. Like it has its moments where it's like questionable, but like overall, I liked it. I'd probably watch it again. I said 78. Pretty average, but better than bad.
Yeah, for me, I think if you go into the movie and you understand it's gonna be like a fun movie, and then you'll be fine. Like it's if you like ignore that this was something that was like hyped up. Like imagine if like one of the next Marvel movies came out today and it was like as bad as this, like, people would hate it. But like if you go into it and you think that like, oh, it's gonna be a fun movie, then like you'll have fun watching it. Like the scenes are genuinely funny just because of how absurd they are and like how they never happened. But yeah, I'd give it like a probably 75 maybe, because I also really like Spider-Man. So I think just for the time, like watching it, and you're like, oh cool. If you go in and want to have fun, yeah, if it was on TV, I'd watch it again. So.
It's definitely a movie you have to watch with your friends. Like it's not. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
watching it by
sure.
myself. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like,
No, but also like to give it some credit, some of the scenes are really good. Like just not.
yeah.
Some of the scenes are standalone good. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, I had that sentiment as well. Like, there were some scenes, like, if you just watched it as, like, the scene itself, it would seem really cool. But, like, within the context of the whole movie, you realize, like, it's just so dumb, like, how it all fits together.
It's because they're balancing, like, 3 villains, and that's the whole problem in the whole movie. That's why the scenes by themselves are so good, but then you watch them and you're like, why were all 3 of these in the same movie?
Right. So I was definitely a little more harsh than you guys on this one. I gave it a 65, mainly because I didn't think it was like really worth your time, but there were still some like good moments, right? And it was like definitely a little more watchable than B movie. So
yeah,
like I guess like for that reason it puts it up above that. But I don't know. I just didn't really like enjoy it that much. There was just something about like
it's definitely worth one watch. Like you should watch it at some point. I don't know how many times if it's like a rewatchable thing, but like it's definitely worth the one watch.
I think a good way to describe it is like it's disappointing. So like if you were a hardcore Spider-Man fan and like you were following the saga and you were like, yo, like Sam Raimi's making these movies, I can get justice for my boy and stuff. And then that came out, like that's very disappointing. But like if you just watched it for fun, you're not being too like critical, it's like, oh, yeah, I'd watch it again.
Yeah. So critics and audience from Rotten Tomatoes, let's see what they said. Critics gave it 63, so closer to what Makthal gave it. Audience was even lower than that with 51%. So
oh boy,
I think disappointing is the correct word to describe it.
Yeah.
But on that note, let's talk about the plot. So quick synopsis of the plot. If you haven't seen it or if you want a refresher. So basically, Peter Parker becomes infected with Venom, a symbiote which amplifies rage. And after learning that Marco Flint, aka Sandman, killed his uncle, he has to fight 2 of the biggest villains while trying to save his friendship with Harry, his relationship with MJ, and the people of New York. So just off the bat, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like it's not as straightforward as the other Spider-Man
I was
movies.
very curious to hear what they would say as the synopsis, like what they viewed as the main conflict in the story. So that was interesting.
No, these are all my synopsises. Like I came up with them.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good.
But yeah, pick some of our memorable scenes. I'll start with some of the ones that before the main memeable scene that I think everyone has said.
The
But
scene
we'll do some build up to it first. So I said first off the JJJ scenes, the J. Jonah Jameson scenes.
Yeah.
I said like almost every scene that he's in was like super funny, quite memeable. He's a good actor and he just plays the character well. So that was one. I don't know if this is like a really minor thing. I don't know if anyone else would have said this, but like when Gwen Stacy kisses Spider-Man like at the parade at the beginning of the movie, and like everyone's cheering for him, like everyone's cheering like kiss him, and then it just pans to one kid who's like, no, Spider-Man, don't.
Yeah. That was like my favorite scene.
I completely forgot that scene. Like it was just so funny though. This kid has more like moral backbone than Spider-Man.
His reaction after the fact too was good. He was just like holding his face like this. Like, oh no.
How does he know though that like
the Spider-Man?
like,
I don't think he knew. I think he was just like, oh, don't do that. That's gross.
Yeah.
Or on the low, he knows that Spider-Man's got a girl.
I mean, probably. Am I right?
Yeah. Anyway, next one was Peter and Harry. Then they were fighting. Like, there's smooth jazz playing in the background, like during the entire first half of their fight. I just didn't understand why. Like it just makes it that much more comical. But yeah, those are mine. You can.
There's one that
I'll
I think
save. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No. I won't say those two, but I will say most of the scenes that Harry is in is just so funny because like he basically the thing that literally makes me laugh so much is like the beginning, right? They're fighting and Harry gets a concussion, right? And he like wakes up in the hospital and everyone goes to visit him and he's like, there's that smile.
There's also the one where he's in the diner and then she gives him the pie and he's like, how's
And
the
he's
pie?
like-
He's like, so
He's
good.
like, so good. I'm telling you, I might have given away who I think the most memeable is for me, but like I think just every scene with Harry is underrated because everyone focuses on the scene when they think about memes.
Right.
But I think Harry's acting is just so bad to the point, like maybe not his acting because I know he's a good actor, but like whoever wrote the script for this movie just did not care about Harry at all. They were just like, cool. And Harry's like, yeah.
Bro, memory loss Harry is like the best.
He's
character.
so
Like,
funny.
one of
He's
the
a
best
vegetable,
characters.
dude. Yeah.
He's like
But yeah,
innocent, but also like he's kind of like a baby. Like
Yeah. And like
it's-
after he
Sorry,
gains
yeah.
his memory, he's kind of like, okay, I don't really like mess with this anymore. But
yeah,
during
that's what I'm
memory
saying.
loss,
his
he's
character
actually,
just
like,
takes 180. Like
yeah.
That's like most of the time he's either like extremely mad at Spider-Man for killing his dad, and then the other half he just doesn't know what to do on screen. Like he's just there and he has to say a line just to like acknowledge that he's on screen. But I think specifically the hospital scene I would say is underrated because and just Harry's most of his scenes in general.
Yeah, I mean, I like basically when it comes to like the plot, I felt like the most like the biggest things that were just kind of like bad to me were just the fact that like, you know, there's so much going on, so like they have to just have things come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, the meteor with Venom just comes out of nowhere. Like there's no explanation for like where it came from, why it's there.
Yeah.
Angry Harry comes out of nowhere. He's like, okay, yeah, he's mad and he wants to like get revenge, but like at the very beginning of the movie, there's like no build up to that at all.
Yeah.
The start
Yeah,
of the movie.
I'll get into
That's
this more
what
in
I've-
overrated probably, but
Yeah. I have read
agree.
that like if they balanced one villain, like it would have been perfect. But
Yeah.
like it becomes such a meme that they have three.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like Sandman, but the fact
No,
that,
I like each of them individually. That's what I'm saying.
right,
Like, I would say.
but like, okay, so then the thing with Sandman is like how he becomes Sandman is kind of stupid. Like he just falls into like this.
Oh yeah, all of these
experiment
are in my overrated. So
Yeah.
And like, okay, I'm fine with him being Sandman, but like there was no explanation for like what that was or why that was there either.
Yeah, that's
But
kind of a meme.
in terms of like memeable scenes, yeah, I definitely had J. Jonah Jameson. I had the kid.
Spider-Man, no.
Oh yeah, so like there were a few other things. So as I was watching this yesterday, my brother also pointed out to me that the French waiter at like the restaurant,
Yeah.
he just so happens to be the same guy who plays the bus driver from Sky High.
Wait, holy shit! Yeah, you're
And-
right.
And
You're right. Yeah,
that's not even important, but just the fact that that's true is funny.
Yeah.
Um.
Sky high. Dude.
Oh yeah, and when edgy Peter is like trying to keep Edward from taking pictures of him, and he destroys his camera.
Yeah.
Like right after that, he just takes out his cool pics, and he's like, "Okay, yeah."
When he destroys the camera too, like the line that they told him to say was "See you later, chump," and he just like jumps into the sewer. I don't know. So I guess now go ahead.
So yeah, okay, this one's probably not talked about as much, but it kind of has to do with the fact that like all these movies from like the late 2000s are all tailored to the idea that it's going to be played in like a 3D setting, right? Like a 3D theater. So all the scenes are just like super like in your face and stuff like that. When Peter breaks apart the water pipes to soak Sandman away, like every time like a rivet pops off of the pipe, with every pop it just zooms closer and closer to Sandman's face, and it's just like to the point that it's comical. I don't know if you have like a clip of that or anything, but like if you watch it again, you'll really see what I mean. It's just there's no reason for that to be there. It's just the fact that it's creepy.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
All right, I guess now we can talk about the memeable scene in the movie, the edgy Spider-Man. This whole sequence of scenes that happens, like there's so many good quotes from just this like the progression. It starts with like him like seeing that like Eddie Brock like framed Spider-Man as like doing something bad. He's like, I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
Then he confronts Eddie, and he's like, dude, the fucking funniest line in this entire scene, in my opinion, is he says, "You want forgiveness? Get religion." And that's so aggressive. Like,
I didn't really get it.
It was just.
I think it's
the only point
Catholic. It's a Catholic thing, I think, because like when you confess your sins, like that's like God is forgiving you.
The main plot point was to get Eddie in the church when Peter rips apart the symbiote.
Oh,
that was literally the only point.
I didn't even make that connection. Shit.
Yeah. He says you want to go to church, and then he goes to church,
so
and then
he gets religion.
He does get religion. Yeah, that's what I assumed the whole point of that line was. Just so he had an excuse to go to church, but.
And tell God to kill Peter Parker.
That's what he does. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He asks God to kill Peter Parker for exposing him for making fake pictures.
Yeah,
that's kind of strange.
That whole thing is just odd.
And then finger guns, obviously.
Have you seen the edit of that scene with no music?
Yeah, it's so weird.
I'm pretty sure you showed that to me.
Yeah, I saw it on like Reddit or something, and I was like, "This is the funniest thing I've ever seen." But yeah.
Then fast forward to the piano scene.
Yeah, the piano. I was gonna say
that honestly was like a little bit over the top in a funny way, like when he's jumping around the.
I think the cuts in that scene are just so absurd because like he starts to like play piano, he's like, right? And then it just cuts to like a close up of his face. He's like, "Now take this," and then he's like. It's just so oddly cut. Like I don't know. It just. But like I get what you're saying. They obviously tried to make that.
I think as a scene, like I think for me that's like kind of an example of where as a scene alone that was like kind of entertaining, but within the context
they
of
acknowledge,
the
yeah, they acknowledge that it was like funny. Like it's stupid, but yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's our most meme scene. Is anything even close to that?
No.
Yeah,
I think everything else is subtle memes, but
everything else is the good memes. But like, this was the moment.
I think the rest of the memes I'm probably gonna talk about are gonna be in our like Jar Jar Binks award discussion because they don't really. It's not like a scene. It's just like them.
Yeah. Okay. Then we can go right to that category, Jar Jar Binks award. Mine's pretty cut and dry. I said Venom Spider-Man. Like when he's edgy Peter. For all the reasons that we just said, plus the dialogue and his acting as an edgelord, like E-boy, he's just so good. Like, yeah, when he just puts the hair down,
he puts the hair, and he's like, oh,
immediately, just like My Chemical Romance starts playing. Like,
it takes me back to middle school.
Just yeah. All right.
But I think I said earlier, but Harry for me, dude. Brain Dead Harry specifically, but even once he goes back to being normal, like. it's like
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, you can like tell that the person writing his script was like, they were like, oh shit, like we don't need to have Harry in this movie, and the director's like, no, like he's gonna be another villain. He's like, what the fuck? Okay, like fine, I just will write him some lines, and he just wrote like the first thing that came into his head, and it's just so funny. Like vegetable.
One of my favorite Harry lines that like isn't even in this movie. It's in Spider-Man 2, but it's like when Peter saves Harry, and then like they go outside, and he's like, I hate Spider-Man or something, and then like
no, what happens
like
is, well, yeah, no, finish the scene.
And then his butler's like, he saved your life, and he's like, he embarrassed me by touching me or something.
Yeah. I was gonna say no. The scene goes like the thing explodes, and so like inside the building, like Spider-Man saves him. Like he just doesn't change anything, and then it goes outside, and the cops and like his building blew up, and he's like, my life is ruined because of Spider-Man. Like it's just it's so funny at that point. Like you almost
it's like halfway through Spider-Man 3 they realize like, oh shit, we already had him be like mad in that previous movie. Let's just do that again. Like
that's just because of Harry. Like it's mostly the writing, but it's just so funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with memory loss Harry. Like I got some things to like back that up. So there was, I forgot exactly which scene this was, but like MJ was like to Harry, will you bump me on the head? Because like maybe like she would have
yeah.
It's like bump.
Who does that? It's genuinely like he's a child, like.
Oh yeah, then there was this other time where I think it was at the time where MJ was calling Harry because she like needed someone to talk to and stuff. And like when they cut to like Harry answering the phone, he's in the middle of like painting something. And it looks really good actually, but like just the fact that he's doing that in like memory loss like stage, like I just think it's kind of funny.
There's that one scene where he's like trying to make Peter mad. He's like, I kissed MJ. He's like, he tasted like strawberry or something. Like licks his lips.
And then when Peter crosses the street and he looks back, and then Harry hits him like the wink like across the street. It was just so funny.
But even before that, right? So when MJ is at his apartment and they're like cooking, he's like, he's making this omelet. And it's like, yo, check this out. And then he like takes the pan in his hand, he tries to flip it. And it just falls on the floor.
The funniest part is the eggs were still liquid, like he just cracked them in the pan and he's like on the floor.
I mean, it's pretty hard to like compete with that in terms of like meme. But like I guess J. Jonah Jameson comes really close. And like on that regard, like I have like a lot of honorable mentions when it comes to this. Mm-hmm. I'll start with like the less talked about ones first. So we got Sandman, right? Just the way he stands and like his facial expression for the duration of the movie, he's just like kind of.
He just looks tired.
Facial expression. He's just like.
Exactly, yeah. And there was like probably once again, no one's gonna be laughing at this except for me. Like when he's like robbing that armored car, and then Spider-Man comes in, he's like, just like stop or whatever, and he says, I don't want to hurt you, leave now, in like the most monotone voice. And like that's gonna tell him to like get out. Like imagine if Spider-Man actually just like left after
that. He's like, oh yeah, good point, see you, man.
Exactly. Okay, then of course you got Peter, right? Okay, Tobey Maguire, yeah, pretty meme in that regard already. He's driving around on his moped. He's taking pictures of Spider-Man, and the way he justifies that his good shots is that he climbed and nearly fell off a flagpole, and the only person who bats an eye at that is Edward.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the question too. Like, how does he get shots of Spider-Man? Like, I just never understood that. Like,
he just claims that he's friends with him.
No, but like, how does he physically get the shot of like Spider-Man?
I assume he like sets up the camera.
Even then, like how hard?
Yeah, like some of them are nice. Hard. Like, yeah.
I don't know, man.
And some of them are while he's in action. Like, how does he like get those?
Maybe he's got this secret ghost photographer. That
a ghost photographer. What if his ghost photographer is Eddie Brock?
What if it's Andrew Garfield?
Oh no.
Okay. Okay. In addition to Peter, okay. So after that, right? when he's looking for Sandman after he escapes in his like sand cloud form, like just the way he looks around, like it's hard to explain right now, but in the scene itself, it just looks so funny. Like it's like the camera's panning around and stuff. He's like so lost and confused.
Yeah.
It just look. I can't like explain it in a reasonable way, but in that moment, it was pretty much like that. The way he tells Aunt May that Spider-Man killed.
Oh yeah,
Marco,
that's
weirdest
was
thing.
so weird.
He dances to the marching drums at the key ceremony thing. Like, who dances to marching music? I don't know. That's kind of weird to me.
I think this was all like a lot of what we said earlier. Like Spider-Man is just supposed to be a comical character, so like they kind of just had him when they have nothing for him to do. They just have him be funny, and it kind of goes overkill sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, you got the landlord. He
He
only has one real.
Rent.
Yeah,
You'll
like,
get
he
your
only-
rent when you fix that damn door.
Oh, yeah, so he only has like a few lines, but one of them I thought was pretty funny was when he realizes he's trying to like make up with MJ, and he tries to give him some advice. He tells him, "Okay, you say you are a good woman, I am good man," and then Peter's waiting for the punchline that just never comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up my discussion of character.
There's a lot of sub-tier meme characters too. Like honestly, like every minor character is like to a certain extent a meme.
Oh shoot, wait, but actually I haven't talked about some of the J. Jonah Jameson scenes. So to like touch on some specifics in there. So the time when he has to like take his pill and his assistant keeps like hitting the buzzer.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good scene.
Yeah, can we also talk about like how many pills he has on the desk? Like, you have cancer, homie. Like, he's like literally like surrounded by pills, and he has to like physically choose like one. Like,
yeah, maybe it was at the time where like homeopathy was still like a thing. I don't know. Oh yeah, when he responds to Edward and he says like he likes my shirt, he just says like, oh yeah, he likes my shirt. Okay, that's reasonable.
yeah.
He like when those two are fighting over the staff position, Edward and Peter, then he responds with, "Does anybody care what I want?" And then his like one of his assistants is like, "I do," and he's like, "Shut up, get out."
Yeah.
And immediately after that, it's like, okay, he wants them to get on working, and he says, "What are you waiting for? Chinese New Year?"
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, J. Jonah Jameson, like, he just did such a good job of portraying the character. Like, he's so good.
Yeah.
Also, that one scene with the kid, and their camera.
Yeah.
Then I'll give you $200
That
for that. Yeah.
Films extra. Yeah.
I'm done now.
Yeah, so then we can move to next category, 5 minutes of internet trivia. So we'll start with some facts about just the movie. So this was the highest grossing movie of 2007, which is pretty wild considering it's a Spider-Man movie, and it's also like the end of a trilogy, which I guess brought in people. Interestingly enough, this movie also was played in the most theaters like worldwide. And can you guess which movie it beat out for the most theaters?
2007?
No, just like of all time at that point, I guess.
Was it Shrek 2?
It was Shrek 2.
I remember that point from the last one. I think that's when we talked about it.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. All of MJ's screams from this movie were recycled from Spider-Man 2. So they just straight up took the screams from Spider-Man 2 and put them in Spider-Man 3.
There's something I read about how there's like a whole thing about how Sam Raimi just loves screaming women. And he just includes them like unnecessarily in all of his movies. And like if you go and look back, like there's times where it's just unnecessary. And he just does like a PNG of like a screaming woman. Like
raises a lot of questions, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I just read so it's like unnecessary most of the time.
Yeah. It took 3 years to create the visual effects required to portray the Sandman's powers. To understand the dynamics of sand, various experiments were conducted with sand, such as launching sand at stuntmen, splashing the stuff around, and pouring it over ledges. And they actually got sand sculptors to come in and like advise them. And
Yeah.
honestly, the special effects for Sandman are like A1. So like,
I'll talk. Yeah, I have
understand
some
why.
points I gotta make an underrated, man. Like
That sounds pretty meta actually, because maybe the experiments they were doing in the movie was to figure out how sand moves.
Oh, too.
Were they researching sand for the movie, or were they doing the movie to research sand?
Who knows?
Yeah. And so in some of the scenes where they had to have characters like covered in sand, because sand is like so dense, it would like actually like be heavy for them. They used ground corn instead. Also because it reflected well on camera. So I think that's pretty interesting. There were many scenes that were shot, but never released on DVD, and some of them include a montage of Peter in his black suit taking down criminals and leaving them strung up. Tons of character building moments, a confrontation between Captain Stacy and Eddie Brock where Gwen dumps him at her father's house, and Peter freaking out after he looks in the mirror and sees a nightmarish version of the Venom symbiote screaming at him. So a lot of deleted scenes. Everyone's talking about the Snyder cut of Justice League.
Yeah.
But I want to see the Raimi cut of Spider-Man 3.
Release the Raimi cut.
The one I want to see is the Captain Eddie Brock when Gwen dumps him, because they never explain why Gwen dumps him. They just like he just loses his job, and for whatever reason, Gwen's like, yeah, this is the turning point. Like we're done, and then she just starts going out with Peter. Like
something about that, because MJ just like hates Spider-Man for being like committed to his job too a lot. This.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to see all of those scenes. I feel like that could have added something.
I would have watched the whole thing again, man. Like
this was a pretty long movie though, 2.5 hours. Like
that's long, yeah, for the time.
Yeah. Next thing is for the role of Gwen Stacy, Scarlett Johansson was considered. So what an interesting turn that would have been if Scarlett Johansson's first Marvel movie was Spider-Man 3.
I don't think I would have worked out too well for her.
The thing is, she seems kind of old, but that's also because like I've seen her a lot recently. I don't know what she looked like back then. But
I mean, yeah, this was like 2000 what, 7? Yeah. It was like a year before the first time again. So.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Maybe I couldn't see it. I think this is fine. I think they did a good job of Gwen Stacy and Amazing Spider-Man. One of the things they did well. I thought Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy was like a pretty good choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, and then the last fact I have, and this is one that I knew actually before finding it online, was that originally Sam Raimi did not want to include Venom in the movie because he wasn't a fan of the character, and he was pushed by Sony to include the Venom as like fan service, and that's why like everyone's like, oh, like they kind of just threw him into the movie like towards the end. So yeah.
That's why I read about like how he like purposely kind of sabotaged him a little by just making the Venom scenes just like awful and just like show it, like kind of prove to the directors like, see, like he sucks, like this is what happens when you make me put him in a movie.
I heard he was like super hyped about like Sandman, because him and Tobey Maguire were like hyping up Sandman like for like months before the movie.
Yeah.
Like, but they didn't talk about Venom at all. Venom was the surprise villain. Like.
Yeah, I mean it's clear that they like only planned for one or two of these guys, and because you can just tell based on the quality of some of the character development and how quick the story goes with some of the villains, and how some of them they just kind of appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for trivia. We'll then go, I guess, to most underrated. So we'll start with most underrated scene. Most underrated for me was I said the Sandman opening scene where he like becomes like he's like controlling the sand for the first time. It was very unique. I don't think I've ever seen like a scene like that in a movie, but superhero movie at least. But and even though there's no dialogue in that scene, like his facial expressions of the sand show like a lot of emotion, and I think that's just an insane use of CGI. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think this is what I was talking about earlier, when there's like some standalone scenes that by themselves are really good, and like 100% that Sandman scene is like by itself one of like the greatest scenes in like movies of all, not of all time, but like it's one of the greatest scenes in movies just because like it's so like beautifully done. Like the music,
in terms of like visual effects,
it's like a very artistic scene. It's like very well done. But yeah, so that, and then also I think this goes along with the music, but when he becomes the Black Spider-Man for the first time, when like he's like spazzing, and then he wakes up and he's like, where am I? And it's like ba 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 ba. Like the whole evil Spider-Man theme gives me chills every time. Like it's such a good theme, and like that sequence is so good because like he's on the wall and he's like, I feel stronger, and then he's like, I feel like more powerful or something. Like it's just very well done. Like the fact that he wakes up and then like it zooms out the black and it's like the suit, and that scene gives me chills every time. Like that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, just because the music also complements it super well. But yeah, those two scenes are just so good. It's like it's a shame that they had to be overshadowed by just how loose the plot was, but like they're just such good scenes.
I'm probably going to talk about the Venom scene later, but I think we're all pretty much in agreement about the animation for becoming Sandman. So like I was kind of like harping on like the circumstances of him becoming Sandman, but like the actual scene is like so nice.
That is good, yeah.
The fact when he like grabs his daughter's like picture and it like slides from his hand, you're like,
and then you can see the facial expression. It's like,
so.
I mean, if there was like a few things, like before I watched it yesterday, if there were like a few things that I remembered from the movie, it was like definitely that scene.
Yeah.
Was that your underrated scene too then?
Yeah, that was my underrated scene.
All right, cool. Then we'll go on to underrated character. So mine was J. Jonah Jameson. He's really comic book accurate, which I think it's so comic book accurate, it's scary. Like that's exactly how he's portrayed in the comics. I say he was hilarious. He broke the tension in every scene he's in. And like this is like a really random thing, but if you ever go to Universal, there's like a Spider-Man ride, and like basically J. Jonah Jameson is the main character of that Spider-Man ride. Like it's you and you're like a reporter for like the Daily Planet or whatever, and
Daily Planet. It's the Daily.
Is it Daily Bugle?
Yeah, Daily Planet. Superman.
Superman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're just like riding around in a car, and then J. Jonah Jameson is just talking to you the entire ride, and it's just so funny. But that's just like
It's an interesting ride, but definitely one I want to take.
The one with J. Jonah Jameson talking in your head. Yeah. I think for me, one of the most underrated characters, just in terms of like performance, like obviously J. Jonah Jameson is also up there, but I think Topher Grace does like a pretty good job of just portraying Venom. Like there's some lines that he has that I don't blame him for, because like especially in the end he's like, I like being angry or something. He just jumps in and kills himself. But like his character, like Topher Grace is actually a really good actor, and like his character is like very well done. Like he's kind of like a Peter. He's like not. He's different from the other movies because he's not like Spider-Man's enemy. He's Peter Parker's enemy. So like I think that's a really good, like kind of different take on it. And again, if any of these movies had a villain that was like, if any of these villains had their own.
This is really random, but there's a spider on my desk.
Oh no!
Should I let it bite me?
Yeah, let it bite you.
I was just talking to someone on Snapchat. Like they put like a picture of a spider on their story. I was like, yo, I watched this movie the other day. It's like, no,
let it bite you.
You'll become the RTP version of the friendly neighborhood.
I was gonna say, but I think, like I said, each villain, if they had their own movie, it'd be really good. And Topher Grace, like again, he does a great job of Venom, other than some parts at the end. So I think he's an underrated actor, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with relation to J. Jonah Jameson, I just think it's really funny if you take a movie like Whiplash. I don't know if you've seen that.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, you watch Whiplash. You watch J.K. Simmons in Whiplash, right?
Yeah,
and then you come back to this. And you watch him in this. That just goes to show like how good an actor J.K. Simmons is.
Yeah, he's great.
And then he also does like the farmers insurance commercials.
Oh yeah, I can't see him as
all these random personas that he takes on. Like it's just like, how does he do it?
He's a great actor, yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually not my underrated character. My underrated character is Sandman, mainly because like you actually, even though this movie isn't like that great, you still kind of feel for him as it progresses. So like in that regard, I feel like Sandman's pretty up there for me.
Because like he doesn't want to be a villain. He's just stealing money to give to his daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I didn't like was how they retconned Uncle Ben's death. Like they were like, Sandman was there, and Peter's like, I can't believe this. Yeah. Like they already went over his guilt in the first movie. Like you don't need to do it again for the third.
Yeah.
So then we can go to most underrated aspect. So I don't know if this is like a controversial opinion or not, but like in the scope of us versus like everyone else, but this is my favorite Spider-Man. Like Tobey Maguire.
Oh.
Like, I'll tell you why.
Out of the three. Oh, out of the three. Okay, yeah.
Out of Andrew Garfield,
I thought you meant this movie is your
Holland.
favorite
No.
Spider-Man movie. Okay.
But
Okay, yeah,
Tobey
I can
Maguire
see
is my
that.
favorite Spider-Man. Because the main reason is because he has like actual like real conflicts both as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Like as Peter, he's juggling like taking care of Aunt May, like he wants to marry MJ, his friendship with Harry, his job. Also, somehow he's still in college, and no one like says that. Like what? That's another thing. He's in college and he's studying like science, but he's also like a photographer. Like
Yeah.
but anyway, he has all these problems as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And then as Spider-Man, he also has to fix all of his problems like on his own, like with no help, which is like super stressful. And that's why it makes it like he's an easy target for Venom. So like that's why like he's one of my favorites, like Spider-Man. Like I just feel like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, which is the argument, is like he just gets everything too easy. Like he's used by Tony Stark. Like
I think the main arguments. I'm not gonna comment on which one I like better because there's like good and bad for both. But I think the main thing is the new Spider-Man. Yeah, he's more of the high school Spider. Like Spider-Man's a young kid. He's supposed to be a young kid. So like that's why like the new one.
And that is an argument against Tobey Maguire because he's like he's like a 30-year-old who's like pretending to be in college.
Right.
Like,
but like that's the thing. Like and technically in the comics, like Spider-Man doesn't have the organic web, so like I guess he makes his own tech, like all that. But the thing with the old Sam movies, like I feel like not just for Spider-Man movies, those kind of paved the way for like making all superhero movies in general like mainstream. So I can like those are two. I definitely would not say the Andrew Garfield one. That's third in my. No
I will say
what.
In defense of the Andrew Garfield one, I really like the Andrew Garfield suit. Like that was one of my favorite side.
Oh yeah,
the suit's nice.
Yeah. He's like, oh no, small knives, my only weakness.
Yeah, that was my favorite line about the entire like two movie
but
series.
It is very close for me. Like I get you. I get what you're saying. That's a common. But
I don't know if y'all ever. I don't know if y'all ever played the Spider-Man video game. But
the one on PS2 or
the one on PS3 actually, like the newer one.
Oh.
The newer one or like the newest one?
Like the PS4.
It's PS4, right? Yeah. I have not played that one. No, I want to so bad, but I don't have PS4.
I mean, like the way they portray Spider-Man, like or not Spider-Man, like Peter Parker as a character in that, I feel like is definitely a lot like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man in that he's like a scientist. He like it's been established that he worked at the Daily Bugle. Like it like takes all the aspects of like the character of Peter Parker and puts them together. And I feel like
he's not in like college anymore.
I don't think he's like a researcher. So like he's probably like
that makes sense
after college probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it takes all those aspects of his character and puts it together really well. I think like maybe in like the movies, like that's done as well, but maybe it's because like the fact that it's overlaid on top of like all these conflicts is why it seems like it could be like really hard. And it is pretty hard to like think of like doing all of that, you know?
Yeah.
Like I guess that's a reasonable like point. Honestly, I don't really know where I'm going with this. I think I'm just trying to say like, yeah, if you play the newest games, like I feel like you would see that reflected as well in there.
This is a side note, but kind of what Sujay said. It's kind of about Spider-Man 1, how like Peter Parker is really old. And I don't want to get into like a Spider-Man 1 meme fest, but I just think it's so funny how when you're introduced to them, like these are all these high schoolers or something, and they're all like grown adults. And the funniest is like the teacher comes in and you don't even know he's the teacher because he's like the same age as them. And he just whispers, he's like, guys, if you talk one more time, I'm gonna like kill you.
Yeah, like, Joe Manganiello is Flash, and like he genuinely looks like he's like a full-grown adult. Like he's supposed to be what, like 16? Like,
yeah, I don't want to get into the whole Spider one, but that you just reminded me of that. Everyone's just absurdly old in the first one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for my underrated aspect, I guess, of Spider-Man 3 is I think the score is really good. Like I said earlier, the Venom theme, or not the Venom, the evil Spider-Man theme. Like it's a really good score. The whole scene with the Sandman thing, that's a good score. I think for the most part, most of the music makes sense with the movie, except like some like the jazz and the fight. Like I guess like okay. If
I
you're
really
going to the
like
comic
the
book.
music that's playing when he's like in the finger gun scene where he's like
But like that fits well. That fits well. Like
yeah,
it's a
that's good.
goofy
Like,
scene. Like I
it
think
makes
the
that
score,
scene like yeah.
other than being well placed throughout the movie, I think some of the music is just very catchy and good. So that's my underrated aspect.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like I just mentioned the Spider-Man video game, and if you play that, you'll like get exposed to like all the different Spider-Man and like all the different like I guess like universes.
Spider-Verses.
I mean, not exactly like the Spider-Verse, but like you get some exposure to like all the different like suits and like kinds of Spider-Man that have been portrayed in like all the comic books and stuff. And I feel like the underrated aspect for me in this movie is that it highlights one of those like versions, right? And although it's not like the most high quality version, it still like plays a role. And I like how, especially in like the newest Spider-Verse movie, so I'll get to that now. Like you see that kind of like acknowledged, and they like take it with grace. You know, like they did it in such a way that they like acknowledge that okay, this isn't the best thing, but it's like a part of it. So I think that's like my underrated aspect. It's like this whole how it fits into the whole like discussion of different Spider-Man and their portrayals. I think like that's pretty underrated.
Yeah.
All right. That's all for underrated then. So then we can move to most overrated. So most overrated scene, I'm going to agree with what Makthal said earlier, which was how Flint Marko becomes Sandman. Like just the setting up for that scene is that he's running from the cops, right? And he hops over a fence into some like science testing area. And then he accidentally falls into this like uncovered vat of sand. And like for some reason they're running like a test in the middle of the night. Like they don't even have scientists or even cameras at the testing site. So like this guy falls in, and then some guys like we got like an extra like mask like there, and it's just, they're like it's probably a bird. Like this dude's like at least 200 pounds. Like what? He just like fell into this vat. Like So that kind of just pissed me off. Yeah.
Especially if it's like an uncovered pit. Like you can't just assume it's something like that. Like right, like at that innocuous, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to go into too many because this is kind of my underrated aspect. But I think that scene is pretty dumb. And then I also do think that the whole Harry losing his memory is just the most overused movie trope of we ran out of what to do with this character, so it's like he conveniently hits his head and like forgets the plot of the last two movies. Like that's all that happens. That's super. It's like the most cliche thing ever. Like they just acknowledge like, okay, we don't know what to do with this character. We just need him to kind of be sitting out for a while we develop the other dudes. Like straight up, that's what it is. So I think I won't talk too much about the other stuff because it's kind of my overrated aspect, but I think that's pretty overrated. And then obviously the whole Sandman thing.
Now that you mention it, like that makes complete sense. Like the way that they just use that to like focus on the other.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying this whole time.
They just sideline Harry.
Yeah. That's why his lines are so messed up because they're like, we need to make sure he's still there so we can remind the audience that when he comes back, he actually has been there this whole movie.
I think the only reason I'm fine with like the whole memory loss thing is because it brings out the best Harry. So yeah, like I'm fine with that. I'd say my overrated aspect is, or not overrated aspect, overrated scene, right? Okay, well, I had an honorable mention, but I think the one I'm gonna go for is like Harry like stepping in the way of
that scene made me really uncomfortable. Like just where it stabs him. Like I think one of was like nipple or something like that.
Something about the Osborn family getting stabbed in weird places. Like I know the place where he dies is like in his stomach.
Right. Like I think like okay, basically for me, there's no reason he had to die. Like, like as he like ran up to there. Okay, like I guess like first from like a logical standpoint, right? If you run up to there and you can get in the way of being stabbed, like of someone getting stabbed, right? You probably have the same ability to like just push them out of the way, right?
Yeah.
And even if that's not the case, like, why did he have to die in the context of the movie? Like,
they just wanted to kill him off. Honestly, like they wanted an emotional moment, I guess. I don't know.
is it just to like resolve like the romantic tensions between like those three? Like, I don't know.
Maybe, I
I
guess. Yeah.
guess.
Who knows?
Also, he runs and he gets stabbed in the back, so he was facing Peter when he jumped in the way. So
he was
like,
running back to Venom, and he's like, "I hope I get this."
like what if it just missed him? Hit Peter. I don't know.
He's like, "Oh shit!" He just
Fair
looks
point,
Peter
fair point.
dead in the eye. He's like,
Yeah, I just thought that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah. All right. We'll go on then to most overrated character. So this one's a little bit of a stretch, but stay with me here, okay? My overrated character is Harry's butler. I'll tell you why. Because he knew the entire time that Harry's dad killed himself, but he just didn't tell Harry. Like, he says at the end, he's like, I was treating your dad's wounds, and I saw that it was from, like, the glider or whatever.
Yeah.
So he knew the entire time, but he was
Right.
just like, yeah, I'm just gonna let Harry deal with this, man. Like, I don't get paid enough to, like...
I mean, he gets like half of his face blown up as a result of all.
Yeah, Harry becomes a
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera, and that's when he decides to tell him that his dad killed himself.
And then the butler just comes in. He's like, "Yeah, like all this stuff happened, and yeah, also I love you, man." Like, he was not like doing it for me. Like, it's just really random to put that in there.
Yeah.
For me, I guess the most overrated. I don't know if this is overrated because I don't know if it's a popular opinion. What I'm about to say, but MJ, I just don't think she was necessary in this movie at all.
Yeah, she was very over the top too.
I don't know if I feel like it has to be a common thing, so I don't know if this is overrated or not. But like, I just hated MJ in this movie. Like, first off, there's 3 villains. You don't need Peter's love interest to be another conflict in this movie. Like, it's just unnecessary. And like every other Spider-Man movie, it ends with MJ in trouble and Peter has to go save her. Like, they just realize that's what they have to do in this movie now to finish the climax. And then I just think, other than the fact she was unnecessary, she was just like an annoying character in general. Like, she was just her whole existence was just to like get mad at Peter for doing random stuff and then get back at him and then be like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, that was her whole arc, and I feel like that's what she's done in every movie so far. She was just unnecessary and like, she just gets mad for no reason most of the time, except that one time Peter kissed Gwen. Like, I guess that was warranted, but like,
I just kissed another girl.
Yeah, when Peter kissed Gwen, that was pretty warranted, yeah. But like, like, other than that, like, she just did not have a place in this movie. Other than they just need someone to save at the end, and they're like, I guess we got to do all the life.
I'm glad you picked that route because that's the same route I went to, and I don't think I would have highlighted it the same way you would have.
Yeah,
like,
it's just unnecessary.
Like, really, all I wrote about when it came to like MJ being overrated was the fact, like, okay, so you mentioned that most of her like issues with Peter throughout the movie are like kind of warranted.
Yeah,
I felt like at the very beginning of the movie there was one that was like completely unwarranted. So like,
yeah,
he was just trying to like tell her that it was like one critic, right? And like, you don't have to like get beaten up over that. And then he was just trying to like give an example of like, okay, well, people say bad stuff about Spider-Man, but like, I try not to let it get to my head. And she's like, it's not about you, it's about me. And it's like, bro, this guy's just trying to help.
I think that whole scene is
Peter
just
at
like,
the beginning of this movie was so nice. Like, he was such a nice guy. Like,
that's what I think the scene at the beginning is like. So like, it's even worse if you follow it from the end of Spider-Man 2. Because first off, she like runs away from her wedding and she's like, "I'm gonna be with you." And she's like, "I'm really ready to accept that you're gonna be Spider-Man. I'll fully support your decision." The first thing she does in Spider-Man 3 is get mad at him for being Spider-Man. Like, the scene is, she walks out of a Broadway, like, her performance, like, that flopped or something.
Yeah.
And then Spider-Man just swings by, and I was like, "Yay, Spider-Man!" And she gets mad at him. She's like, "I can't believe he's hogging my fame." Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in agreement there. For me, it's MJ.
all right, cool. Last thing we'll have is overrated aspect. So I think we'll all have something similar along these lines, but the overrated thing I think is like just the progression of scenes. I think like the editing, dialogue, and just general flow in this movie just feels off. Like, I'll give like the example of like these scenes. So like, basically the movie starts out with a fight between Harry and Peter. For like no reason, this causes Harry to lose his memory. So okay, I find that happened. Then they retcon Flint Marko as the guy who killed Uncle Ben instead of the guy that Peter thought and like confronted in Spider-Man 1. Venom waits an hour into this movie before even showing up. And then the whole part where Harry gets MJ to break up with Peter, that's also thrown in there as well. Then we have like the edgy Spider-Man scenes, the Eddie becomes Venom scene, and then already we're at the final battle. Like all these scenes work individually, but when they're all just put together, it's too confusing to the point where it's like almost comical. Like I said that this feels like honestly almost like 3 movies have been stitched together, and like they took parts from each of them, and they could have all individually been better, but it kind of just feels like it's a Frankenstein of like Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, because I think going off of that, like the end, like when they get to the final battle, there's like 20 minutes left in the movie or something, right? Like it's very near the end, and they're kind of like, we just need everything to end right now. It just goes so slow, and then it gets to that point, and it's just like, shit, like we gotta show movie.
It's kind of like the B movie in that sense, I guess.
The B movie.
No, but the B movie was that the trial happened, and then there's 30 minutes left in the movie.
True. I mean, I guess in the way that like they had to have like all the flowers like immediately pollinated, like they didn't have time to like have that play out, I guess.
Yeah, I guess my overrated aspect, kind of bouncing off yours, is just the general convenience that every villain has in this whole movie. Like, again, like the whole thing, like, okay, let's look at each villain, right? So Harry's the main villain, conveniently loses his memory just so he can sit up for the rest of the movie. Okay, cool, that's fine. Sandman, we talked about how he just waltzes into this like random government facility. Okay, that's cool. Venom again stays dormant the whole movie. And then the second Eddie Brock becomes Venom, he just finds Sandman in some random alleyway, like almost immediately. And he's just like, and his voice, we didn't talk about it.
And somehow he knows his whole story.
His voice is absurd.
Like,
yeah, he just knows everything. His voice is just so absurd for Venom. Like, it's not what you'd expect to come out of that person's mouth.
Oh, yes. Something I haven't mentioned at this point is that, like, I could not get over, like, Topher Grace being, like, Eric in the 70s show.
Yeah.
I only mentioned him because he acts the same way, too. Like, he just, like, he's joking. His quips are all the exact same. So, like, I could not get over that. But, like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, like, just the whole convenience. Like, he finds Sandman, some random alleyway. And I think the worst one, no matter how absurd all these are, the worst one is MJ just jets in a random taxi. And it's the one that Eddie Brock had planted outside. You know how many taxis there are in New York? Forget maybe they planned the taxi outside her. There's probably like 7 other taxis in the same spot. And she just gets in. And not only that, she just gets in and they just drive away. Like no one, she screams, I think, right? No one says anything. They just drive away. It's just, there's so much convenience that they just kind of did to like let everyone meet up that like they just needed to make room for stuff to happen. So to do that, like they were just like, okay, we need to cut some time off the movie. How can we do this? Like they just doing it to each other. Harry just forgets like the whole convenience was my problem.
My brother and I were actually talking about that scene last night because like, she gets into the taxi, right? And then it cuts to like him being like, okay, where to, right? So like, it's him, right?
Yeah.
There's this unnecessary jump scare right after
that. Yeah, when she like looks at him and he does the Venom like.
He does the.
And like you bring up a fair point, like people are definitely gonna hear that, and then
the convenience that these villains have just to get through the plot is just too much at that point. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah. My overrated aspect is probably not what you'd probably think, but for me, it's also probably looking too into like logical things, like does this make sense? But just the way that Venom works, it's like, okay, this like, I don't know, it's just black blob, right? That came from space. Yeah. And when it takes over Peter and he like has his suit on, like I can see it like taking the shape and like the design of his suit, but he didn't have his mask on during that, and then it takes the design of his mask too. Like it just doesn't
becomes a suit for him.
Yeah, I was confused about that. I was like, so he has 2 suits? Because I think for the longest time I thought it just covered his suit, and then when he like, but then I think he rips it off, right? Too. So like, what happens is the suit just like gone now? Like,
yeah,
that whole thing that was just a very confusing part for me.
Right. So like when he rips it off, that makes it seem like okay, that suit was just like the Venom thing.
Yeah, but he
Right?
has another suit.
So then you can't even make the argument that there's two suits and this one just like took over one of them. Right?
But he throws away his old Spider-Man one too.
Wait, really? Wait, what?
Does he not throw? Oh no, never mind.
No, he still has the old one.
Yeah, no, he has it.
Yeah, because that's how he like puts it on and gets in the like last fight scene too.
Yeah.
Still has it. But yeah, like it just like the way Venom works doesn't make much sense.
And then when he takes over Eddie Brock, it's just so much more aggressive and like
and he grows teeth too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen the Venom movie, right?
I haven't. No.
I've seen it. Yeah, I thought that was.
I haven't seen
pretty
it.
Decently done. The thing is, he doesn't have a suit in that. Like the character is just Venom, and he's just like huge. Like he just becomes like the Hulk with the symbiote becoming like his muscles and tongue and teeth and everything. Yeah.
All right, cool. I guess that's all we have. Does anyone say anything else about Spider-Man?
Give me pictures of Spider-Man.
Pictures of Spider-Man.
You should watch some clips of the Spider-Man 2, from 2000 whatever, like gameplay of that.
We should start a separate gaming channel where we just play the games that the movies that we watched.
IT, like that would actually be pretty interesting. I'd be down to try that out.
Yeah. All right, be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, thanks for listening. I figured out how to do an outro, guys. Thank you for listening to our episode on Spider-Man 3. If you haven't already, please give us a follow on whatever platform you're listening to this on, and also follow our Instagram at Overrated Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit us up with a like and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. This has been Overrated.